I guess you guys wanted to continue the trend of Gen 1 Pokemon with Gen 4 evolutions, so this week we have Electabuzz. While the classic Pokemon episode Showdown at Dark City is more known for its ketchup-loving Pikachu, it is also where most of the world first met Electabuzz. Depicted as powerful and temperamental, this tiger-like beast wasn't a Pokemon you wanted to mess with. Even its second generation pre-evolution Elekid swaggered around like a certified thug intent on mugging some unwary Pikachu. And then in the fourth generation, it gained an evolution into the towering, motorized Electivire. Electric types have been a staple of competitive play since the onset of the metagame, so let's find out how good were Electabuzz and Electivire actually. And in this video, we'll be talking about these competitive formats. Unfortunately, in Red, Blue, and Yellow Overused, the existence of Zapdos means Electabuzz isn't ever seeing serious play. Zapdos is much stronger, much bulkier, and has a good physical stab that maims Exeggutor, as opposed to Electabuzz, who is completely destroyed by Exeggutor. Jolteon is the alternate electric in the tier, and thanks to Pin Missile, it isn't stopped by our egg-headed friend. And it also has a high critical hit rate with Double Kick for Chanseys. Buzz's submission is not an advantage over that Double Kick, and in any case, being outsped by Tauros, Starmie, and Alakazam would be much worse. Thus, there's no OU usage whatsoever for Mr. Lightyear. In underused, Electabuzz is okay, but faces serious competition from Raichu, who is slightly slower but has superior special and has access to Surf to really pound ground types. Electabuzz can still hurt them with Psychic, which is also excellent for tearing through the grass poison types that Raichu can't, and it also has higher speed that can be useful. But overall, it's still a bit of a give and take. Electabuzz is a unique case in GSC overuse. It's an electric type that doesn't need to rely on hidden power for its ice type coverage, as it has access to the stronger freeze-capable Ice Punch, as well as the useful Fire Punch. And to top it off, it has Cross Chop to smack Snorlax and Blissey on their softer side, especially with its vicious critical hit rate. Its speed is quite excellent for the tier 2. Outrunning Zapdos is a big deal. However, the positives end there. Its offenses are not that great, so even though its coverage is unmatched, it still won't exactly muscle through everything. This, combined with its frail defenses, means that it doesn't really scare other Pokemon much one-on-one, except for like Skarmory. So basically a light breeze will knock it over, which means it struggles to find actual practical use. Plus, it is hard-walled from one of the best Pokemon in the game. Even 2 consecutive critical hit cross chops in conjunction with spikes will just about never take Raikou out. One could use worse gimmicks, but Buzz is unfortunately just a little bit outmatched in the overused tier. In the underused tier, however, it is absolutely excellent. It gained 10 special attack with the special split splitting into 2, which helps a lot, and its speed and coverage are perfect for cleaving through everything in its way. Most teams must pivot around it with their Nidoqueen, and only teams with Ampharos or Hypno can truly stand up to it somewhat safely, and those Pokemon don't appreciate Thief variants, robbing them of their leftovers. Again, it still is frail, but the overall power level is lower, and it's got more opportunities to switch in and scare Pokemon out, and thus Electabuzz finds itself among the elite in GSC underused. And while it's by no means a staple, overused Buzz is actually a pretty good gimmick in Advanced. While it's completely destroyed by Dugtrio and has no defensive value whatsoever to speak of, the way the metagame is structured lends itself to a certain vulnerability to its super effective coverage. Most electric types must choose between Hidden Power Ice or Hidden Power Grass, but Electabuzz has access to the elemental punches, which means it can effectively run both coverages. In addition, its access to Cross Chop means it absolutely destroys Tyranitar and smacks Blissey pretty hard too, in addition to the other traditional special walls like Regice and Snorlax. This gives it an entirely unique niche as an electric type. Its speed tier is also terrific, since outrunning the plethora of base 100s is amazing, and most Gengars are EV'd to be slower. But of course, the aforementioned problems of it being defensively worthless loom over it rather largely, in a metagame where even frailer Pokemon such as Aerodactyl have some sort of offensive-defensive capability. It's also just not quite that strong. However, while perhaps not the most competitively ideal Pokemon, Electabuzz's role in the overused metagame does exist. And once again, it is absolutely excellent in underused. While it has new walls to deal with such as Grumpig and Volt-Absorbed Lantern, its ability to thief cripples most walls, its speed is tremendous, and it's strong enough for most other things. It won't go toe-to-toe with Queen Kangaskhan, and its frailty does hinder it somewhat, but it is a major threat in the underused metagame that destroys many common Pokemon and can leave teams scrambling to counter it. Now on to Gen 4. Only a few Pokemon have been as hyped in their debut generation as Electivire. It's always exciting when a new Pokemon takes over, and Electivire was ready to step up as one of the top Pokemon synonymous with the new generation. In Diamond and Pearl, type coverage was even more important, as shown by the hugely threatened Mixed Infernape, and Electivire's coverage was amazing. With its classic set of Thunder Punch, Ice Punch, Cross Chop, and Earthquake, it nearly hit everything super effectively, and even had the new item Expert Belt to further boost those hits. While he did suffer a significant speed drop by evolving, it was made up for by an incredibly exciting new ability, Motor Drive, which would boost his speed if hit by an electric attack. With the new physical Gyarados scaring everyone to death, it was easy to bait Thunderbolts for Evire to switch in on. This infamous combination, dubbed Gyravire, was a staple of early Diamond and Pearl, but became known as a noob strategy later, as Electivire itself dwindled in effectiveness. As the meta went on, its flaws became apparent soon enough. Despite its fearsome attack, it still struggled against physical walls, and Thunder Punch wasn't too scary, meaning even something like Skarmory that was weak to its stab didn't mind it too much, to say nothing of Swampert and Hippowdon. Diamond and Pearl also had Cresselia and physically defensive Celebi everywhere, who couldn't care less about either half of Gyravire. Gaining +1 speed also wasn't that great when Choice Scarf users faster than it existed, including the incredible Garchomp, who otherwise commonly ran Yacht Berry, so Electivire couldn't even kill it if the move even landed. It tried to use Meditate sometimes, but it also had to decide between Cross Chop or Earthquake, another difficult decision. The former was better against Tyranitar and Blissey, but worse against Heatran, and vice versa. Its special attack was the same as Electabuzz's, so it tried to make mixed sets that used Hidden Power Grass, especially since it also had new, shiny access to Flamethrower, which could help against Bronzong, and at least Skarmory wouldn't be shrugging off its stab if it was Thunderbolt. However, then it'd have to split up its offenses and either give up on Ice Punch, meaning things such as Gliscor and Dragons destroyed it, or have pitifully weak Ice Punches that barely scratched anything that didn't have a quadruple weakness to it. But the true nail in the coffin came with the release of the Rotom appliances in Platinum. Here was an absolutely top tier Pokemon, scaling the usage stats that just completely manhandled Electivire no matter what it might try to do. In a cruel twist of fate, Electivire then proceeded to brutally spiral down from one of the most exciting new Pokemon to a Pokemon synonymous with newcomers. It never quite reached underused in usage, as its attributes were quite alluring to the new player who'd then spam it on ladder, but it didn't see any overused success for the rest of the generation, despite many players' attempts out of curiosity. Unfortunately, it's just bad, and has been for about a decade now, and doesn't look to change that anytime soon. And unfortunately, in overuse, there are much better electric types than Electivire. And in the weather generation, there's unfortunately nothing to report about Electivire. Team Preview truly ruined it, as now it couldn't even switch in and take an electric type attacker by surprise. Absolutely no redeeming qualities in overuse whatsoever. And with underuse resembling the previous generation's overuse, people now knew better than to try. Not that there were many opportunities for it anyway, since competition was pretty stiff. It did gain the move Wild Charge as a more powerful stab that had recoil, but that wasn't enough to save it from rarely used. And it didn't particularly shine there amongst the influx of Uxie and Dredagon. Despite the potential of its trademark mixed sets, they were inconsistent both in getting on the field safely and dishing out damage, and thus nearly no one wanted to risk the potential burden it was likely to foist upon its user. It did gain Vital Spirit as a Dream World ability, which was potentially useful for staving off sleep moves from Lilligant and Smeargle, but realistically was never used, especially with how common regular Ghost-type Rotom was, bringing back memories of DPP. And thus, even in rarely used, Electivire was completely and utterly forgettable. And in Gen 6, Electivire continued to drop to the next generation, finding itself all the way down and never used, where it didn't exactly topple the usage charts or have any secret hidden potential. Its lack of true power meant that Pokemon outside the sphere of its super effective coverage, like Masharna and Mega Audino, that also happened to be hugely popular, would easily put a stop to its antics, in addition to its age-old problems of bad defensive typing, making it struggle to safely get on the field, and mediocre speed making it easy for it to be chased off the field. Which is to say nothing of its constant electric type competition, such as Lantern, who actually provided numerous forms of utility for a team. Even its counterpart Magmortar can usually do Electivire's job better, and it's so cruel how it gets worse and worse in every generation, but yeah, I guess that's the way the news goes. And in Sun and Moon, Electivire continued its tragic descent down the tiering ladder, making it all the way down to the desolate depths of PU. There it sang the same tired old song, Too Frail, too slow, too incapable of dealing significant damage consistently, and too much better competition. From being outrun and revenge killed by Lycanroc and Primeape, to being walled by Clefairy and Spiritomb, to being outclassed by Electros, Togedemaru, and Alolan Raichu. It had different surroundings, but it was the same depressing story. And I'm sure you've noticed, we once again haven't mentioned VGC until now, and that's because Electivire is also historically terrible in it, and thus has no notable placements over the past 8 years. The dearth of electric type competition doesn't do it any favors either. It's slow, not strong enough, it's frail, it's got an awful earthquake weakness, and it doesn't resist much of note. Everything we already know basically. In a lot of metas, Landorus steering is basically omnipresent, which is of course the worst thing ever for Electivire because it's weak to earthquake and intimidate. And as for its competition, there's a whole host of electric types that outclass it over the years, which include but are not limited to Thundurus, Mega Manectric, Zapdos, Raikou, Rotom Wash and Cut, Xurkitree, and of course Tapu Koko, and sometimes even regular Raichu. There are simply much better Pokemon to use in the VGC metagame. For example, in 2013, even Electabuzz was probably a better choice, thanks to Follow Me, although that was also outclassed in its own right. And the best players have correctly chosen not to burden themselves with Evire's presence. And that's it. So how good were Electabuzz and Electivire actually? Unfortunately, for the most part, they were quite bad when it came to overuse. Even at its best, Electabuzz was still a gimmick, despite its effectiveness in the lower tiers. And after Electivire's short-lived reign as one of the definitive Diamond and Pearl Pokemon, it began a brutal descent into more and more pathetic territory. It would take nothing short of a major overhaul for these Pokemon to ever see the light of overuse success, given how their flaws are so prominent and interfere with any possibility of them being consistently viable. This also extends to VGC too, where it's just basically unusable. Unfortunately, not every Pokemon can be great or even good, and these two Pokemon serve as a shining example of that. Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content, and of course, as I always say, comment on what Pokemon you want to see next. Also, thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos, and thank you to everyone else watching as well. And follow my crew on these social media platforms, yada yada yada. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.